And guess what we do? We go through another command change. Yeah, there's Burnside fumbles around for what's called the Mud March. And it literally was. Cannon sinking, horses sinking, and they go back into camp at, quote, Falmouth. And on the 25th of January, Lincoln dismisses Burnside and gives us Joe Hooker. Now let me be clear. Hooker came in, by goodness, God better have mercy on Robert E. Lee, because I'll have none. I'll be in Richmond next week. Of course, Lee didn't agree to all that. But he does good things. He gets this, ovens in every brigade level campsite to make bread. No more hard. He pays them on time. He had a 40% desertion rate, and it develops a rotating time to go home. You go home, you're not back in 3 weeks, I'm going to send them after you. And it worked. But here's the thing. During the Battle of Chancellorsville, Hooker increased the effective strength of the Union Army to 135,000 soldiers. It included for the first time an active fighting cavalry unit, not just guys carrying flags to ride beside the generals. Lee had to send Longstreet, under orders from Jefferson Davis, to Southside Virginia, leaving him with only 60,000 troops. Let me look here. You, sir, you there in the coat. Would you stand up, please?
Oh, boy.
You look like a military expert. Now, sir, this is not a trick question.
I don't know.
In a fight between 135,000 soldiers and 60,000 soldiers, sir, who should win this battle? It's a tough question.
Probably 135.
Probably 135. Thank you, sir. You may sit down and pick up your prizes at the door. But folks, that's the Battle of Chancellorsville. Who should win that, right? And the maneuvers begin. The problem is, talk about preservation, you'll never save all of it. It's 110 miles of operational area. It, above all these battles down there, it is the one I say cries out for a guide, or you're going to ride around in the dusty country roads of central Virginia. But it's this massive thing that began with cavalry operations on April 20th and ended on May 6th. Now, the thing though, Hooker very carefully put everything together, but there was no fighting until May 1st. You see what's happening, all this maneuvering. I call it a huge chess game. By the way, in the middle of it, May 3rd is forgotten because, again, what is observed is what everybody knows about. This very defiant flanking maneuver by Jackson, a massive flank attack. Oh, wow, that's the Battle of Chancellorsville. It went on for 4 more days. And on May 3rd, for example, everybody here probably knows that Antietam, the bloodiest single day of the American Civil War. Back when Jerry and I were young, there was a TV ad that said, "Remember, has to try harder." The second bloodiest day in the Civil War was May 3rd at Chancellorsville. I mean, had you ever heard that? Because no, nobody knows number 2. But that's how long this battle went on. The Union Army up to the upper right was on one side of the river. Lee had stayed where, but Hooker, by gosh, look what he did. He was going to start crossing down at your lower crossing, where your group was in December. He then sends the cavalry upriver, way upriver. They begin to come in behind Robert, can you see that Robert E. Lee is getting surrounded there? Well, Hooker comes across and makes his headquarters at a little place called Chancellorsville. Do not think in your mind village. Do not think small town. It is merely a place where there was a place Patrick was looking for, a tavern. And that's all it was, and all that's there now is the remains of that tavern. Well, Lee begins to move upriver a little, moves up because he doesn't want to he wants to call some of the shots. Hooker could have surrounded him, and Lee would have been reacting to him. Well, as soon as Lee moves, you see the position Hooker's in, it was like he got cold feet. And there have been dozens of books written about this. It's like he took what we'll call the initiative, where he'd had it for 2 weeks, and he gives it to Robert E. Lee. And Lee, whatever you think of the guy, you don't give him the initiative because he's going to take it from you and hit you over the head with it. And so there began all this continued maneuvering around, but not at Chancellorsville. That is what Chancellorsville looked like. That's in the Park Museum. It was a massive combination inn, tavern, and family home to the Chancellor family. This is all that's left. All right? But the battle isn't there. What is preserved is Jackson's amazing 12-mile march out in the woods of Virginia, his overwhelming attack. Oh, look up at the top of the map. That's the First Corps. Guess who that is? They've been brought up from Fredericksburg, and they're just waiting there, okay? What happens, Jackson's attack, which is preserved, your Corps, the First Corps, Meade's Corps, and Couch's Corps are all in reserve to the rear, up there at U.S. Ford, the crossing. That's where your guys are. They're on this side of the river guarding it. The battle rages here. By this point, around Chancellorsville, there's even some in Fredericksburg, at Salem Church halfway away. Your guys are there. Remember that 135,000 figure I gave you? Well, about 10,000 of them were cavalry that had been sent away, and 3 entire corps that Hooker never committed. And thus Lee, with great casualties, claims victory at Chancellorsville, and your guys had set in the rear. Is that place reserved? No, it's now a reservoir. What I mean is preservation is hard. Okay, so you've had 2 battles in Virginia. One, you were in the thick of it, and finally it's been preserved. The second one, you weren't really in the thick of it, and nobody cares about it. I mean, it is literally a water reservoir. And what happens next, of course, not immediately, but we go through another command change, and your guys and everybody else is leaving Falmouth and headed to where? Gettysburg. Oh yeah, I did put that in. Jackson gets taken off the chessboard. And it's now time for me to pause. That's your first 2.